I wed Emma, convinced she was the one destined for me. For 9 years, we experienced a consistent, though unremarkable, joy. Our lives revolved around three children, two of whom were twins, embodying the very essence of our existence. In a suburban neighborhood adorned with tranquil streets and meticulously manicured lawns, she and I crafted our life together, and those early days linger in my memory with warmth and nostalgia. The stillness of the suburban nights enveloped me in a sense of security, as if we existed within a protective bubble, impervious to the world's darker realities. After a long day at work, we would nestle into our home, laughter echoing through the rooms, the twins softly cooing in their cribs, while our oldest child wobbled around the living room, eager to explore. Frequently, upon my arrival, Emma's radiant smile illuminated the corridor. She would embrace me with a cozy hug, accompanied by a playful quip about diapers or dinner, and in that moment all felt just right. So flawless, I never envisioned how swiftly it could all come apart. It began last year with a solitary decision that Emma took, without seeking my input. That decision shattered our marriage completely, leaving behind only feelings of betrayal, fury, and an insatiable desire for retribution within me. Had anyone suggested to me in those days that Emma's loyalty might be so fragile, I would have dismissed them as a fabricator. Yet the reality is that loyalty can dissipate more swiftly than one might imagine when an individual chooses to disregard the significance of their partner. One fateful night, she unleashed the truth. Her twin sister Julia, along with her husband Ryan, yearned for a child. After years of hardship, Julia's doctor suggested the path of surrogacy. Emma intended to take on that role as a surrogate, yet the impact that genuinely broke me wasn't the concept itself. It was the reality that she never took the time to seek my counsel beforehand. She had already initiated the process without my knowledge. The moment is vividly imprinted in my memory. We found ourselves nestled together on the couch. We were present in body, yet each adrift in the depths of our own musings. The glow of a late-night comedy show danced across the screen, lingering in the shadows of memory. Emma cast a fleeting look my way, phone poised in her hand, and remarked with an air of nonchalance, "Michael, there's something I've chosen to pursue." The nonchalant quality of her voice triggered a sense of unease within me. Emma reserved that tone for moments of significant revelation, a declaration she was resolute in delivering, indifferent to my opinions. My stomach twisted in knots. The television fell silent under my command. I inquired, "What is happening?" "Your expression conveys a sense of gravity." She delicately tucked the dark strand of hair behind her ear. "I will be Julia's surrogate." I blinked. "Could you clarify what you mean?" Emma met my eyes, her voice unwavering. "Julia is unable to conceive a child. She has endured several IVF cycles, yet none have yielded success. The doctors recommended a surrogate, and given that Julia and I share the same DNA, I find myself to be an almost ideal candidate. I have already communicated with the clinic." Her words came out with such a straightforwardness that, for a fleeting moment, I wondered if she was teasing. As I detected the absence of a smile, my heart began to race. "You've already," I remarked, swallowing hard. "Emma, are you implying that you are expecting Ryan's child?" She released a breath. "Julia's offspring and Ryan's offspring. It would be their genetic embryo. I am merely the vessel." My jaw clenched involuntarily. "So when exactly did you come to all these conclusions without informing me?" She lifted her chin. "I anticipated your reaction. I arrived at this decision because Julia is my twin, and the sight of her in misery is unbearable to me. After a thorough discussion with Ryan, I am convinced that this is the path I wish to pursue." Ryan and I discussed it at length, I reiterated, a seething coil of anger twisting in my gut. "That is wonderful. In the meantime, I am your husband, and I was the last to discover this. Can you even begin to comprehend my emotions?" Her eyes sparkled with irritation. "Michael, I regret to inform you, but this is my body. I shall proceed with this endeavor, regardless of your consent. I had hoped for your support. I realize I should have shared this with you earlier, but I was aware that you would attempt to dissuade me, and this matter holds great significance." For a fleeting moment, words eluded me. my throat constricted with a seething rage. Is that all there is? Are you really asking me to embrace a pregnancy that doesn't belong to me? To witness you nurture another man's child within our home? And you believe I'll simply smile and applaud? Emma placed her phone aside, folding her arms across her chest. It can be named however you please, yet this is indeed unfolding. Julia and Ryan are relying on my support. If your love for me is genuine, then you'll honor that sentiment. A chilling serenity enveloped me, more terrifying than overt rage. Honor? Respect is not demonstrated by catching your husband off guard with a decision that affects our marriage. Your choices extend beyond your own body. They resonate through our family as well. She stood there, her fists tightly clenched. Cease portraying yourself as the victim. Julia is part of the family, and I am determined to save her. If that eludes your perception, perhaps I have misjudged you all these years. The concluding remark pushed me to my limits. Did you think too highly of me? Emma, should you proceed with this, it will undoubtedly drive a wedge between us. She glided by, her shoulders tense and unyielding. Perhaps we are not as resilient as I once thought. I lingered in the shadows, a tempest of emotions swirling within me, my heart thundering so fiercely that the rush of blood echoed in my ears. I attempted to inhale deeply, to push through the waves of anger, yet it surged within me like a betrayal, so deep that words eluded me. The stillness of the house enveloped me, heavy with the lingering weight of her revelation. Despite my attempts to soothe my racing thoughts, a quiet certainty lingered within me. All had transformed. The ensuing days were fraught with tension. Emma candidly discussed her experiences with doctor's appointments, fertility medications, and implantation timelines. She spoke to me with a casualness that felt more suited for a conversation about groceries than the profound implications of surrogacy. I struggled to pay attention, a wave of nausea washing over me. Every reference drove home the reality that she had opted for a path that dismantled any semblance of the partnership we once shared. 2 evenings after she first shared the news, I returned home to discover a box from a fertility clinic nestled in our fridge. Scattered across the kitchen table were vials of medications, syringes, and instructions, creating a chaotic tableau of care. Emma perused a hefty stack of documents. "What is this all about?" I inquired with a pointed tone, motioning toward the assortment of items. She cast a fleeting look in my direction. "Hormonal therapies. I must begin them to prepare my body for the embryo transfer. The clinic dispatched them sooner than anticipated." My gaze fixed on her, a sense of disbelief washing over me. "Did you really believe this didn't deserve a discussion?" She gave a slight shrug. "I have already conveyed that we have moved beyond our previous discussions. I am progressing onward." My voice emerged, low yet taut. "You seem to be overlooking my emotions in this matter. It seems you remain indifferent to the fact that you're driving me further away, don't you?" She let out a weary sigh, her eyes drifting upward in exasperation. "Cease the theatrics. After 9 months, I will pass the baby to Julia. I'm not suggesting that I'm substituting our children for another. This endeavor is intended to assist my sister. Text, I can hear you rationalizing it all you want," I muttered. "However, should you choose this path, I assure you I will not remain in this marriage." She lifted her gaze, her eyes sharp and unwavering. "Michael, if your pride cannot bear my decision, you are welcome to take your leave." My face ignited with a fierce heat. What is pride? This is unrelated to pride. It is entirely about collaboration. You caught me off guard entirely, discussing it with Ryan. "What's the harm in having a conversation with Ryan?" she insisted, her voice escalating. "He is the progenitor of the embryo. His presence in the conversation was essential." I released a laugh, devoid of joy. "And I am the partner with whom you exchange promises? Or does that no longer hold any significance?" Once more she gathered the papers, subtly signaling my dismissal. "Our time here has come to an end, Michael." I lingered in that moment, a heaviness settling in my heart. She remained oblivious to the harm she was causing. My fingers quivered with the desire to snatch the fertility papers from her grasp and shred them to pieces. Yet I was acutely aware that it would cast me as a lunatic. With a swift pivot, I departed from her presence, allowing her to immerse herself in her new endeavor, while I sought to calm my racing breath. That night, as I lay awake in bed, I made a quiet resolution. If Emma chose to navigate this journey by herself, then so be it. I would seek a divorce, for no matter how I tried to rationalize it, I could not bear to witness her belly swell with Ryan's child. As Emma discovered that I had reached out to a lawyer, she burst into the living room, where I was assisting our eldest child with their homework. She emanated an intense fury. "How dare you?" she spat, her voice low and measured to avoid disturbing our child, who was engrossed in their coloring. I placed the crayon aside, instructed my child to remain still, and led Emma into the hallway. "Hush your tone," I instructed. "I wish to shield the children from the echoes of our disagreements." Her eyes bore into me with a fierce intensity. "Did you really believe it was appropriate to hastily seek out a lawyer and initiate divorce proceedings?" My chest ignited with a searing sensation. "I warned you of the consequences that would follow should you choose to proceed without my guidance. Yet you forged ahead regardless. I have reached my limit with being overlooked." She shook her head, tears glistening in her eyes, yet those tears were born of fury. "Michael, we have the ability to resolve this. All that remains is for you to accept my decision, and then we can proceed forward." I raised a hand. "You're not quite grasping what I'm saying. No solution exists. You acted in secrecy, manipulating our finances, and pursued surrogacy as if our marriage held less significance than your sister's desire for a child. Did you honestly think I would simply respond with, 'Of course, darling, that's wonderful'?" Her lips trembled slightly. "I never imagined it would lead to divorce. My, how frigid you are." I let out a brief, sharp laugh. "Perhaps I find myself in that state now. Yet I felt no chill when you arrived at that conclusion. That is what led me down this path." She parted her lips to respond, only to snap them closed with a decisive finality. Though her anger was palpable, it appeared to hinder her ability to articulate any further accusations. At last, she pivoted sharply and ascended the staircase with purpose. I remained frozen, my heart racing, longing for the solace of believing this was merely a bad dream. In our state, a mandatory separation period of 1 year must be observed before a divorce can be finalized. Emma was aware of that, and during that year, we would find ourselves sharing the same roof, if only for a time. She stood her ground, asserting that she had no alternative place to turn, that her health required moments of rest, and that the children were entitled to a secure home. I was reluctant to disrupt my children's lives, so I chose to endure her presence. Though tolerate was a rather generous term, she made her home in our guest room, or occasionally sprawled on the living room couch, while I claimed the master bedroom as my own. We navigated our surroundings as if we were unfamiliar souls cohabiting, exchanging only the faintest of words. The children noticed naturally and inquired why their parents no longer shared the dinner table together. We endeavored to maintain a facade of civility in their presence, yet an undercurrent of tension infiltrated every nook and cranny of the house. One weekend, Emma's twin sister Julia arrived with Ryan by her side. In the living room, they were perusing baby strollers and a glossy catalog, exuding an air of ownership over the space. With the children frolicking outdoors, I found no need to feign politeness. As I entered the room, Ryan stood up from my recliner. "Michael, hey," he uttered with a hint of discomfort. "We were simply making arrangements for the baby." Emma caressed her belly, which was just starting to reveal its gentle curve. "Ryan and Julia wish to ensure that we are ready. There are specific elements within my home that are essential for my comfort." My gaze lingered on her. "What prevents Ryan from purchasing all of that for his own home, considering that is where the baby will ultimately reside?" Ryan released a nervous laugh. "We believed it would be wise to have supplies on hand during Emma's pregnancy." I severed the connection. "Do not even think about discussing supplies in my home as if it were your own private nursery." Emma's cheeks turned a deep shade of crimson. "Your expectations are quite unrealistic. Are you really expecting me to endure hours on my feet in their absence while feeling nauseated or in need of rest?" "I reside here, Michael." I tightened my jaw. "Indeed you do. Perhaps Ryan and Julia ought to demonstrate a bit more respect for me and refrain from treating this house as their headquarters for baby planning." Ryan cast a fleeting look at Julia, who lingered behind the couch, her arms crossed defiantly. Julia cast a piercing gaze my way. Michael, it's not as if we take pleasure in being here, she remarked. Our aim is to ensure that this process is as gentle for Emma as we can manage. My anger ignited fiercely. Allow me to surmise you anticipate my compliance, perhaps even indulging Emma's whims, catering to her pregnancy desires, all for a child that bears no connection to me? Julia raised her hands in exasperation. For heaven's sake, we are family. This should not revolve around personal ownership. It revolves around the essence of mutual support. I squinted my eyes. The essence of family faded when you both drew Emma into this scheme without my knowledge. Ryan released a weary sigh, a sound heavy with frustration. I understand that this situation feels a bit uncomfortable. Awkward barely scratches the surface, I snapped. However, if your worries for Emma run deep, consider creating a cozy nook within your home. Acquire each and every item from that catalog. Please refrain from doing it in this location. Your unannounced visits are becoming a cause for concern, and if they continue, we may find ourselves facing a significant issue. Emma stood, her indignation palpable in the air around her. They cannot be excluded from the house. This is my home as well. I betrayed her trust. Perhaps it would have been wise to consider that before choosing to reveal your pregnancy to them instead of your husband. We lingered in silence, our eyes locked in a fierce exchange, until Julia reached out and seized Ryan's arm. Let's go, she declared, her voice trembling with fury. This is unnecessary. They rushed out. Emma spun on her heel, her finger jabbing in my direction. Your behavior resembles that of a child. I trust you understand that you're pushing away our children's aunt and uncle, I said with a shrug. I would prefer to distance myself from them than allow them to intrude as if my marriage holds no significance. She left in a fury, abandoning me to the seething turmoil of anger that had settled into my core like an unwelcome companion. The ensuing months settled into a bleak pattern. Emma's belly swelled. She expressed her discomfort with morning sickness, persistent backaches, and an unyielding sense of fatigue. She anticipated that I would care. She would ask, Michael, could you fetch me some crackers from the kitchen? Would you be so kind as to fetch me a pillow for my back? I turned down the offer each and every time. She would hiss, what sort of heartless man are you? How can you stand by and witness the mother of your children endure such suffering without taking any action? I would retort, you are the surrogate for Ryan. Allow him to take care of it. If he is unable to, reach out to Julia. I carry my own worries, such as nurturing our children and maintaining the stability of our home. She would storm away, frequently in tears, lamenting my harshness. Yet every tear she released landed upon the unyielding surface of my heart. I recalled how she had exhibited no empathy towards me when she chose to bear another man's child without even a word of discussion. I extended to her the very same lack of consideration. She attempted to manipulate my emotions. In the stillness of the night, she arrived at my doorstep and confessed, I can't sleep. My legs are experiencing a painful cramp. Would you mind rubbing them as you did during my pregnancy with our twins? I gazed at her from the threshold, her expression a blend of yearning and anticipation. Then I stated plainly, no, and closed the door before her. My children observed the tension. Our eldest inquired, Dad, why have you stopped hugging Mom? I embraced the harsh reality and spoke softly, acknowledging that sometimes adults struggle to find harmony. Yet my love for you remains unwavering, and I will always stand by your side. The purity reflected in my child's gaze ignited a fierce desire within me to confront Ryan and Julia for placing us in this predicament. Yet above all, it filled me with resentment towards Emma for allowing it to unfold. As the months slipped away, Emma's family wove themselves into the unfolding drama. Her mother reached out to me, her tone laced with a palpable air of superiority. Michael, it's hard to fathom the level of selfishness you're displaying. Emma is performing a truly admirable and selfless deed for her sister. How can you refuse her your support? I spoke with an icy detachment. Perhaps you could inquire with your daughter about her reasons for acting without informing me. She is not entitled to my assistance. The infant does not belong to me. Her father resorted to intimidation. A young man, he snarled into the receiver. You are venturing into a shadowy abyss. If you choose not to assist Emma, we will ensure that you come to regret that decision. I couldn't help but smirk at the phone, even though he was oblivious to my expression. It's quite intriguing, as I find myself regretting the decision to place my trust in your daughter regarding my marriage. Best of luck with your menacing words. They abruptly ended the call. I was certain that the whole extended family saw me as a creature of darkness, yet I was aware that the court would recognize the truth in the evidence presented. Emma carried a child that was not mine, with financial support drawn from our shared resources, all without my agreement. That responsibility lies with her. A particularly dire confrontation unfolded in the 7th month. Emma, her belly round and weighty, came home one evening, laden with grocery bags. She fought to maintain her grip, almost letting one slip from her hands onto the porch. She called out, "Michael, could you lend me a hand?" My back is in excruciating pain. I swung the door open, my arms crossed defiantly. "Inquire with Ryan or Julia," I suggested. "They are the cause of your pregnancy." Her eyes shimmered with unshed tears. Yet I caught a glimpse of the simmering anger lurking beneath the surface. I just dedicated hours at the hospital attending to some checkups. I find myself utterly drained. "I'm still your wife, whether you approve or not," I let out a snort. "Not for an extended period, and certainly not in essence. Your point is well understood." With a cry of exasperation, she pivoted and began to haul the bags inside by herself. A few cans tumbled from their resting place, rolling across the porch. Yet I remained still. In her fervent attempt to gather everything at once, she inadvertently bruised her forearm. With a breathless sigh, she placed the groceries on the kitchen table and shot me a piercing glare. "You can't keep punishing me this way," she spat. I raised an eyebrow in curiosity. "I am not imposing any punishment upon you. I am simply choosing not to embrace the role of the supportive husband that you discarded." With a hand resting gently on her belly, tears cascaded down her cheeks. "When this child arrives, you may come to regret your indifference." I chuckled, a noise stripped of any joy. "Trust me, I won't, for you will have departed, and this child will no longer be a part of our existence." She drew in a breath as though I had dealt her a blow, then marched into the guest room, leaving me in a house that felt oppressively quiet in the aftermath of the turmoil. I let out a breath, contemplating whether I had overstepped my bounds. Yet whenever compassion for her began to waver my determination, I recalled that she had made a solitary decision that disregarded the very essence of our union. My anger remained steadfast. As the clock struck midnight, Emma found herself unexpectedly thrust into the throes of labor, just shy of her 8th month. Strange sounds echoed through the hallway, a haunting moan that was soon accompanied by desperate knocks on my bedroom door. "Michael!" she cried, her voice quivering with anguish. "My water has broken. The contractions are beginning to arrive. I would greatly appreciate your assistance." I opened the door to find her expression twisted in anguish, her hands pressed firmly against her swollen belly, beads of sweat clinging to her hair. For a fleeting moment, the recollection of assisting her during the labor of our own children danced in my thoughts, only to be swiftly overshadowed by a wave of bitterness. "I refuse to take you to the hospital," my voice icy and unyielding. "That responsibility belongs to Ryan." Her eyes widened in astonishment. "Ryan remains unresponsive. Julia's phone is directing all calls straight to voicemail. I must reach the hospital immediately." I let out a small shrug, retreating a step. "Request an ambulance immediately." She clutched the doorframe, another wave of contraction surging through her. "Michael, I implore you, you cannot simply allow me to endure this torment." Our gazes met in a silent exchange. "Observe her," as she faltered, tears streaming down her face. With a brief nod, I acknowledged your coldness. Such is the consequence of disregarding the emotions of your partner. Wishing you all the best with the little one. I'm retreating to the comfort of my bed. She released a heart-wrenching sob as I shut the door behind me. In the dimly lit hallway, she stumbled, her voice rising as she likely dialed for help. In a mere 15 minutes, the paramedics made their entrance. The ambulance's lights flickered through my window, casting an urgent glow in the dimness. I could hear the sound of them whisking her away. For a brief moment, guilt clawed at my insides, yet I suppressed it with determination. She had opted to overlook my presence. What compels me to hasten to her side when the life she carries is not of my own making? The following morning, my phone erupted with a flurry of calls from Emma's mother. Voicemails filled with anguish echoed accusations of my abandonment of Emma in her time of labor. I discarded them all, barely allowing myself to listen beyond the opening moments. She desired a child for her sister, thus allowing her to depend on her sister's family. Emma and the baby remained in the hospital for a number of days. The infant, a daughter, arrived early but was in stable condition. With Julia grappling with her own health challenges, Ryan found himself pulled in two directions, darting between the confines of two hospital rooms. I carried on with my daily routine, dropping the kids off at school, heading to the office, and preparing dinner in the evening. When Emma's mother called to inform me that Emma would be home in a couple of days, I merely replied, "That's her choice," and ended the conversation. As I sat in the living room, engrossed in my book, Emma finally made her entrance. She appeared wan and weary, cradling the newborn in a portable car seat. She lowered the seat, released a deep breath, and settled onto the couch. The infant shifted, emitting a gentle whimper. I gazed at the infant, a small, pink-skinned embodiment of the surrogacy that shattered my marriage. "So," I inquired, my voice sharp, "what brings you here with the baby? Isn't it meant to be with Julia?" Emma gently shut her eyes. "Julia remains in the hospital, on the path to recovery from complications." Ryan finds himself engulfed by a wave of emotions. They requested that I care for the baby here for a few weeks. I let out a derisive laugh. They inquired, "Are you volunteering?" Her eyes burned with intensity. "Is there a distinction? Leaving her behind is not an option. She is utterly defenseless." "You ought to have considered that prior to choosing to become a surrogate," I remarked. "However, let us be unequivocal. I shall not be moving a muscle. If you find yourself too weary to manage the tears, that is a challenge you must confront." She pressed her fingers to her forehead, a solitary tear tracing a path down her cheek. "Have you always been this cruel, or did I push you into it?" she whispered, her words seeming more like a conversation with herself than with me. "That's a question to ponder in the quiet hours of the night, amidst the cries of the baby," I replied. "Now, if you'll pardon me, I have actual children to tend to." She recoiled as if I had struck her, yet remained silent as I turned to begin preparing dinner. Throughout the coming month, the nights echoed with the cries of the infant. Emma would meander about, still in a haze of sleep, attempting to warm the bottles. She approached me, shadows lingering beneath her eyes, pleading for assistance. I turned it down each time. "Please," she whispered one night, tears cascading onto the bottle cradled in her hands. "I require 30 minutes merely to recline. The infant has been wailing for what feels like an eternity." I maintained her gaze, steadfast and resolute. "Reach out to Ryan or your mother." With a frustrated sob, she turned away, the baby's cries resonating through the hallway. A fleeting pang of regret washed over me for the child. It had committed no offense, yet this was the result of Emma's actions, not my own. I would not allow her to escape responsibility. Emma's parents came by frequently, their fingers wagging in my direction, hurling names at me: monster, coward, unfit husband. At times, Emma's father would attempt to trap me in the kitchen. "Hear me out," he would declare. "One ought to feel a sense of shame. Emma has recently given birth. She requires a moment of respite. It is not acceptable to simply leave her behind." I would cast a sharp, piercing glare in his direction. She ought to have considered that prior to disregarding my boundaries. "Allow Ryan to take care of the baby. Allow your family to take care of it. Not my child, not my concern." He would march off, muttering curses beneath his breath. The relentless symphony of disapproval surrounded me, and I faced it with a dark sense of fulfillment. Emma's family perceived me as devoid of compassion, yet the legal framework favored my position, particularly when the financial matters arose. The divorce process trudged along, progressing at a glacial pace. My attorney unveiled compelling evidence indicating that Emma had accessed our joint accounts to cover various surrogacy-related expenses, at times even forging my signature. The timeline was meticulously detailed in the court documents. Emma's blatant dishonesty, her complete disregard for my objections, her manipulation of our shared finances. The judge regarded forgery with a notably harsh perspective. In the midst of it all, Emma's attorney attempted to portray me as a heartless individual who had forsaken his expectant spouse. However, the truth that the child was not mine, coupled with her concealed intentions regarding surrogacy, rendered her claims rather flimsy. Emma's twin sister and Ryan, rather amusingly, chose to remain quiet about finances, likely feeling a sense of relief that they wouldn't bear the burden if Emma decided to deplete our accounts. Their desire for the baby was undeniable, yet with Julia's persistent health challenges and Ryan's precarious employment status, immediate full custody was beyond their reach. The arrival of the baby in our home transformed the atmosphere into a peculiar, fraught situation that everyone loathed yet felt compelled to tolerate. As we arrived at the final hearing, Emma had regained her physical strength, yet she appeared worn, burdened by the responsibility of caring for a baby that was not hers to hold on to. She trapped me in the living room, just 2 weeks shy of the court date, with the baby peacefully napping in the bassinet. "I require some financial assistance," she stated with candor. I lifted my gaze from the screen of my laptop. "What is the purpose?" With a moment's pause, she wrapped her arms around herself. "My doctor advises that I concentrate on my postpartum recovery. It's not necessary for me to secure employment right away." I arched an eyebrow. "Emma, you are no longer my concern." Her lips pressed together. "I am still the mother of your 3 children," she snapped. "My focus isn't on the financial aspect of surrogacy. What I need is financial support to sustain my life, to provide for our children when they are in my care, and to cover my portion of the expenses." With deliberate care, I shut my laptop. "Upon our divorce, I will fulfill my legal obligation to provide child support for our children. I will not be providing you with spousal support." Her eyes sparkled with intensity. "I am entitled to a sense of financial stability." "I gave up my body, my comfort, for your sister," I interjected. "That's where our paths diverge." Her voice quivered. "Your cruelty knows no bounds. Do you not see the weight of my struggle with postpartum depression?" My gaze lingered on her. "My concern lies with our children, rather than the baby that is biologically Ryan's, or the postpartum situation you brought into the conversation. You crafted this reality, Emma. Now you must inhabit it." She sealed her lips, tears beginning to gather in her eyes. "You'll regret it," she said, her voice trembling with a mix of fury and heartbreak. I gently shook my head, a silent gesture of disbelief. "That sentiment has crossed your lips previously. Our sole lament lies in the fact that we find ourselves entangled in this predicament." She swallowed hard, her gaze flickering toward the infant. "Michael, it pains me to express this, but you are not the person I once knew." A hollow laugh escaped my lips. "You are no longer the woman I once wed. Life evolves, Emma." She strode off, abandoning me to the stillness. The infant continued to slumber, unaware of the chaos that surrounded it. In the final week leading up to the court date, Emma made the decision to relocate, bringing the baby to her mother's home until Julia regained her health and could take custody once more. In a flurry of motion, she hurriedly packed, the sound of boxes clattering around her, tears tracing paths down her cheeks as she meticulously folded her clothes. Their innocent faces, filled with uncertainty, turned to us as they inquired if their mother was departing for good. She endeavored to comfort them, promising that she would visit frequently and that her love for them remained steadfast. They nodded, yet a heaviness of sorrow lingered upon their small faces. On the day of her departure, she lingered in the foyer, the baby carrier resting at her feet, a modest suitcase clutched in her hand. Her gaze met mine, the edges of her eyes tinged with crimson. "Once more, Michael, I kindly request that you refrain from proceeding with this action. Please refrain from finalizing the divorce. I will discover a solution to mend the situation, I assure you." A peculiar sensation pulled at my heart, yet I allowed it to fade away. Repairing the past by reversing the clock, for that is the sole path forward. The actions you took cannot be reversed. A single tear traced a path down her cheek. "Never did I envision a world without you. My intention was solely to assist Julia." I nodded, a bitter taste lingering on my tongue. Indeed, you provided assistance to Julia, and in doing so, you set our marriage ablaze. Farewell, Emma. With a deep breath, she grasped the baby carrier and stepped out into the world beyond. The door closed softly, a click that echoed in the stillness of the vacant house. I shut my eyes, releasing a tremulous breath. For the first time, I experienced a sensation that resembled relief. We stood on the precipice of conclusion. On the day of the final court proceedings, Emma found herself seated at a table alongside her attorney. I found myself seated at yet another table, accompanied by my own thoughts. In the gallery, Ryan and Julia stood side by side, their faces mirroring a shared sense of unease. The judge, a woman with a stern visage, had meticulously examined all the documents. Emma's attorney delivered a poignant address, recounting the story of Emma's abandonment during her pregnancy and portraying me as the source of emotional turmoil. My attorney laid out a meticulous timeline. Emma made the decision regarding surrogacy without my agreement. She utilized our joint finances for the procedure and falsified my signature to accomplish it. I had consistently expressed my refusal and established a boundary that she chose to overlook. As the judge addressed the court, her tone was sharp and precise. She perceived Emma's actions as a flaw-Michael violation of our marital bond. She understood that the infant did not belong to me, thus relieving me of any financial or parental responsibilities. In the matter of spousal support, she found no justification for my obligation to pay, particularly in light of Emma's mismanagement of finances. The judge McHale'd me primary custody of our 3 children. Emma was McHale'd visitation rights, contingent upon her ability to demonstrate a stable environment. In the end, she was instructed to reimburse a portion of the marital funds that had been misappropriated. As the judge pronounced her verdict, Emma's expression fell apart. Her cheeks glistened with tears. She stifled a gasp, her shoulders trembling as she pressed her hand to her mouth. Ryan and Julia shared a glance filled with alarm. My heart pounded in my chest, yet above all, a sense of vindication washed over me. The satisfaction of my revenge was finally fulfilled. I had turned my back on the wife who had deceived me, and the law stood in my favor. We ventured into the corridor beyond the courtroom. Emma drew near, her eyes puffy and red. "Michael," she whispered, her voice quivering. "It was never my intention for things to reach this point. I sincerely apologize. My remorse is genuine. I erred, yet I never anticipated you would sever our connection in such a manner." I looked at her, recalling the evenings I had begged her to reconsider, her scornful replies, her unyielding pride. "You chose to prioritize Ryan and Julia's needs over our own, and you were not truthful about it. That transcends mere error. It shattered us." She exhaled sharply, a breath torn from her lungs. "My deepest hope is that, one day, you might find it within yourself to forgive me." My gaze held an icy detachment. "You have replicated my signature without my consent. You turned a deaf ear to my pleas as I implored you to reconsider your actions. Forgiveness is not easily McHale'd." "Farewell, Emma." Julia inched nearer, her hand reaching out to rest on my arm. "Michael, can't you perceive her regret? She accomplished it for my sake." I pulled my arm back sharply. "You've achieved your desire, Julia. The child belongs to you. Now you can confront the consequences. If you believe Emma is worthy of it, you and Ryan can lend her your support." I have reached my limit. They remained silent, their expressions frozen as I made my way toward the door. The corridor seemed to glow with newfound light as I moved on, as though a heavy burden had finally been released. In the weeks following the final decree, Emma took up residence with her mother, the baby remaining in her care until Julia had fully regained her strength. Each time I encountered Emma during the custody exchanges of our 3 children, she appeared delicate, burdened by a sense of regret. She would inquire about the children's well-being, and I would respond with courtesy, yet maintain my distance. She would often direct wistful looks my way, as though anticipating a gesture of affection. I provided nothing. Ryan and Julia ultimately assumed the responsibility of nurturing their infant. Whispers circulated that they were in dire financial straits. Ryan found his hours slashed at work, while Julia's hospital bills mounted relentlessly. Emma, weary from her financial burdens, found herself grappling with the challenge of securing a stable job. Once the tension dissipated from our home, my children began to thrive. We settled into a serene cadence. Days spent in classrooms, adventures on weekends, cozy evenings with family and films. No longer will the wails of a restless infant disturb the tranquility of the night. The days of unspoken battles echoing through the corridors are over. From time to time, Emma reached out through texts or emails, sharing her regrets, reflecting on how she never anticipated Ryan's unreliability or the persistent health challenges faced by Julia. She remarked that the experience of being a surrogate ultimately hadn't benefited anyone in the end. It had merely spawned further turmoil. I provided courteous, succinct responses, focusing solely on the schedules and needs of our children. On a particular day, my eldest child gazed up at me, engrossed in a world of colorful Legos. "Father, do you still hold love for Mother?" I halted, sinking to my knees beside them. My concern for her stems from the fact that she is your mother. Yet there are moments when adults transform, shattering the bonds of trust. They appear to embrace it, retreating to their small plastic bricks. The issue settled in their thoughts. Children often possess a remarkable candor. It's one reason I hold them in deep affection. What you see is what you get, devoid of any facade or ulterior motives. Months transformed into a year. With the divorce now a distant memory, a sense of liberation washed over me. I retained the home, secured steady employment, and maintained primary custody. Emma floated through the children's lives, never fully finding her place again. Ryan and Julia welcomed their new baby, yet from what I've gathered, it was far from a fairy tale. They faced mounting medical bills, engaged in disputes over finances, and found themselves with scant time to offer Emma assistance. She had sought the support of her parents, who were prepared to assist, but only to a certain extent. There were moments when people inquired, "Why did you not extend your assistance to her following the birth?" It was clear that she was engulfed by a wave of emotions. In response, I would say that she chose a path that left me out, and now she must bear the repercussions of that choice. They frequently shook their heads, deeming me ruthless. It is possible that I was. In the realm of marriage, the pillars of respect and honesty stand as essential foundations. She exhibited neither. Ultimately, my quest for retribution transcended the realms of violence and public disgrace. It was about allowing her to confront each and every consequence of her decision by herself. I retracted the support she had come to assume was unwavering, allowing her to witness the harsh reality that unfolded when she overlooked her husband's trust. The judge aligned with my perspective, as did the unforgiving truths of existence. If you were to inquire about my feelings regarding the ruthlessness I exhibited, my answer would be a resolute no. Emma struck the first blow with her betrayal. I reciprocated by providing her precisely what she sought: independence, separate finances, a lack of emotional support, and a clear understanding that our marriage would not endure through a pregnancy to which I had never agreed. Ultimately, I reclaimed my freedom and my children, while she was left to contend with the selfless choice that fractured our union. That is the tale of how surrogacy for her sister transformed Emma from my cherished wife into an unfamiliar figure, and how I discovered my contentment in refraining from rescuing her from her own decisions. If that is deemed cruel, then cruelty became the cost of my dignity. It was a cost I was more than eager to embrace,